away we go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Vinyl Power. That's right, the podcast where we talk about our love for vinyl records and share it with you. Join us each week as we bring you the latest in vinyl releases, what's in our vinyl collection, and wrap it up with epic vinyl. That's right here, each and every week, with your hosts, the Reverend Jeff Kelly and Kurt Harris. Once again, welcome to Vinyl Power. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Vinyl Power, the new year 2018. I don't know what it is about that intro music. It just makes me want to do the swim, but it sure enough does. I mean, it's just one of those things. Hey, I am the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and remember, Iron Maiden will make you sterile. Woo-hoo. Over there is Kurt, the Music Man Harris, feeling better from North Carolina, and we are going to talk about spinning some epic wax, as they call it. I don't know why they call it wax. Vinyl's not wax. But let's do it, because I know. Edison used to, the original Edisons were on wax. I get it. Whatever. Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. We started off every week with the release calendar. So get out your pens and your papers, because there's a whole whopping one this week. Apparently, Big Business is releasing Solid Gold Medal from 2004 to 2009. 4 LP box set, gatefold jackets, Joyful Noise recordings. That's all I know.
That's all I know.
That's all I know. And as they said back in the Great Space Coasters, any news is good news with Gary Gnu. Wow. Hey, Gary Kurt, Gnu. Man. That's right. It's been a couple of weeks, pal, but I know we've been spinning records through the flu and all. We still managed to get up and change vinyl. It's a miracle, I know. Kurt and I have both been suffering from that miserable Black Death that hit everybody right around Christmas time, and we're still not even over it. But here we are, for the love of the records. We're doing it with you guys. So tell me, buddy, what has been on your platter this week?
Well, of course, our first show of 2018, and most of the records that I've been spinning were records that I had, a few that I bought for myself, I admit, and a few that I got as Christmas presents. And, I figure a good place to start would be the first ever Paul McCartney. Linda McCartney also appears on this. So Paul and Linda McCartney solo record after the Beatles, Ram.
Nice.
This is 1971. It charted well. I mean, it hit number 1 on the UK and number 2 in the US. I would say this particular record seems to be a mixed bag for many fans.
So this is before John's dead, but after Yoko killed the band.
Well, you see, one of the interesting things is, of course, since the Beatles had sort of a contentious, because of the John Yoko issue, a contentious split up, and basically John and Ringo and George poured over the lyrics and were looking for hidden messages. What was he writing about us? And so there was a bit of going back and forth, and Paul admitted to 1 or 2 lyrics about John, but nothing too salacious.
It was the first rap battle in 1971 between the Beatles.
It
wasn't NWA. It was Paul versus John way back when.
East London versus West London.
That's right. You punks are just imitators.
I think it's a really good record. But I will admit that, you can certainly see when you listen to it that it's one that probably a lot of people have looked at and went, it just doesn't hold up to, of course, it doesn't hold up to the Beatles.
Well, no, the Beatles were the super group.
But I think if you were a fan of John's contributions to the Beatles, I mean, of Paul's, and if you were a fan of the songs that Paul wrote, you can easily get into this record, put it on, and enjoy it. It is a good record. I wouldn't name it as a great record, but it was a good place to start for the week. And and just by the way, this is the brand new gatefold remaster on 180 grain. These came out just before Christmas. This record costs like $15 at Amazon.
Wow.
You know, I mean, seriously, brand new 180 gram.
How did it sound? I mean, what's the production value on it? Really nice.
Yeah, it sounds great. So, really a bargain.
I love it when they do that, when they don't make you pay $35 for the remaster. I mean, there's no need for that. That's just gouging the listeners is what it's doing.
I certainly could not.
On that $2.50 worth of vinyl.
I couldn't agree more. And moving on from that, we go into what could be.
I saw that one around. Yeah, band.
This could be my favorite of, the post Beatles from Paul, which is the Band on the Run record. This is Wings, of course. So he has some more influences, and I think it was good for Paul to have.
Now, is it Paul McCartney and Wings, or is it just Wings?
No, it really is Paul McCartney and Wings.
Right, because it was Paul McCartney, the singer, with the band Wings.
It is Paul McCartney and Wings,
like Bruce Springsteen in the in E Street Band. I mean, it really is that
basically
kind of
or Bob Dylan and the band.
Right, exactly. Paula Abdul and the Jackasses, whatever those guys were.
Sheena Easton. So
Prince and the Revolution.
This has a lot of songs that you would recognize, and I think this was of course, all of the Paul McCartney, Wings, whatever, they're pop albums. They're basic pop records. They're optimistic records. They're basically mostly happy records. You can put them on, and basically every song will pretty much give you a smile at some point. There's, nothing sad or that would bring you down about these records. And like I say, I like the Paul McCartney and Wings records. This may be my favorite one. Of course, I've always loved the song Band on the Run. Pretty much drew me to Paul McCartney and Wings to begin with. And then there's so many more good songs that you can enjoy. And again, this is part of that remaster. And I think this one might have been $17 or $18 possibly. And it just sounds fantastic. It's a great reproduction. It's a great remaster. It's 180 gram and just sounds great. And so that's what I was doing after Christmas. I have a lot more records that I got for Christmas, but I just wanted to start off this first show of 2018, just focusing on these three, since these three were the Paul McCartney and then Paul McCartney and Wings. And so here's Wings at the Speed of Sound, which a lot of this record was actually written while they were playing live on the previous records.
Some people say it's their best album.
A lot of people do say that. It's 1976. One of the interesting things, I mean, it went to #1 in the US, #2 in the UK. So it was done at Abbey Road.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. I actually have to go back because there's something I really need to mention about Band on the Run over these three records in general. This one's done at Abbey Road. Obviously, as you can see by the little sticker there, it's a nice German pressing.
Made in Germany. Everything's good made in Germany.
Germany is known for their good pressings, and again, this is another one of the new remasters. I'm sure I paid under $20 for it, and just a great record for the price. Definitely a pop record. But I have to go back because there was something I forgot to mention about Band on the Run that I should definitely bring up. And that's this. Like I said, Wings at the Speed of Sound follows this record. It was done at Abbey Road Studios in England, a nice, safe, homely place for Paul McCartney and the boys to play, right? Well, they wanted to go to an exotic location to make this record. They went to Lagos, Nigeria.
Wow.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well.
No.
So they go to Lagos.
That's been a war-torn area for like the last 300 years.
So they go to Lagos, right, to make this record. And like I said, it's a great record. It came out great. But not only were they attacked, intimidated, accused of stealing African music, and had to actually play the album live for some local warlords to show that they weren't stealing their African music. But they were also leaving the studio, and the studio was terrible. Hardly anything actually worked, and it only had an 8-track recorder. This is the time when you could go use a 32-track recorder in almost any studio. 8-track recorder that barely worked. And I don't know why Paul McCartney was set on this, but it was so bad that 2 of the band members left. And Paul McCartney basically had to do some double duty and play a lot of the guitar work on this album because the guitar player is one of the guys that left.
And so, that's why it's and wings. That way you can replace those guys anytime you need to.
Yeah. And not only that, but they were leaving the studio with a lot of the satchel with a lot of handwritten notes, tape, a lot of things associated with the music. They were robbed, beaten at knife point and robbed, and all that was stolen. So eventually they quickly wrapped it up as quick as they could. They had a little barbecue party on the beach and fled from Nigeria. And they went back to London to Air Studios in London, where the material that they had recorded was, put back through modern day working equipment in this album. So I couldn't let this slide without coming back to this album and definitely saying that, because it hit me when I went to the next album. I was like, yeah, they did it at Abbey Road. Well, of course they did after this experience. And one thing I'd say about this, if you know who Ginger Baker is, the drummer from Cream. Well, Ginger Baker's, he was always known as one of the most dangerous men in rock and roll. He actually had a huge horse farm in a part of Africa that wasn't far away, but it wasn't in Nigeria. And he actually came and took the band to his horse farm and to his private studio there. And they did cut one track.
They got a whole track finished.
They did cut one track at Ginger Baker's African studio. And if you know anything about that, eventually Ginger Baker had a bunch of problems there, and the warlords came after him. And he literally, this is a pretty amazing thing when you think about it. Ginger Baker fled out the back window of his home in Africa and ran through the African jungle or veldt, whatever he was in. I don't know if it was desert. I don't know what kind of terrain it was, but he actually had to flee and hide for 3 weeks before he got to where he could be transported back to Europe and out of harm's way. He actually had to flee African warlords. So,
well, yeah, you can only thumb your nose at them African warlords before they show up with tanks and friggin' grenade launchers and stuff.
Yeah, just kind of an interesting piece, not only to that record. And like I said, it's so simple. On the next record, you go, yeah, they cut this record at Abbey Road. Oh, wait a minute. There's a reason why they were at Abbey Road. What a joy. So anyways, those 3 were the main. I listened to other records, and I'll bring them up next week, hopefully. But those 3 were the main that I listened to during this week. And I have to ask you, Reverend Jeff, now that the holidays are over.
Oh, yeah.
And they were great holidays, except I guess we both really got sick.
We wanted to die. I literally had the black pukes and craps for 2 days. I thought I was going to die.
I wasn't doing very well myself. So we muddled our way through, and here we are yet again.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask you, now that you're pulling yourself out of it, you've been spinning some records.
Oh, yeah.
What vinyl records do you have for us this week in 2008?
Well, I actually made myself go down to the shop since I guess we went on the 2nd of they were closed on New Year's Day, so we went down on the 2nd day of the New Year to see what kind of karma luck I was going to have in the bin picking this year, and I must say it's going to be an excellent year.
I love that record.
Yes, the Blue Oyster Cult, Tyranny, and Yeah. That's the one.
Tyranny and Mutation, one of my favorites.
Yeah, let's see here. Is the second studio album by the hard rock band Blue Oyster Cult, released February 1973. The old Reverend here wasn't even born yet. Not for another month. Columbia Records. It was produced by Maury Krugman and Sandy Pearlman. Everybody knows the name Sandy Pearlman these days, anyhow.
Absolutely.
The album peaked at number 122 on the Billboard Top 200. One single was released from the album, and that was Hot Rails to Hell.
Hot Rails to Hell.
Didn't even chart. Was it their greatest album ever? No, but it still has some awesome tracks on it. Baby Ice Dog, Wings Wetted Down, Teen Archer, Mistress of Salmon Salt. Yeah, bitches. That's the Blue Oyster Cult. That's one of the things that I was listening to this week.
I love that album. If you put on the first album, Blue Oyster Cult, then put on that one, and then put on the third album, Secret Treaties, they flow beautifully from one to the next. Each one's only like 30-some minutes long. Really fun to listen to all three back to back. Love that record.
So, well, the next one up, of course, now is the Rantin' and Ravin' with the Stray Cats. That's right. The third album from the rockabilly band Stray Cats, released in 1983. They weren't afraid to take it back to the 1950s. The album featured the number 5 hit, She's Sexy, and 17. Yeah, that's right. And a top 40 hit, I Won't Stand in Your Way. It is out of print on CD in the U.S., which means I was really lucky to find a vinyl copy of it as well. Honestly, it's got Rebels Rule, Top Hip Hop, Look at That Cadillac, 18 Miles to Memphis, She's Sexy, 17, I Won't Stand in Your Way, Hot Dog Gang. I mean, you put this on to listen to fun. Like, you don't listen to this to be sad. You listen to this because you want to listen to fun.
And that's a great fun record.
That's exactly what I love about the Stray Cats. The next thing up we found here was the Come Dancing with the Kinks. You're like, huh? Come Dancing with the Kinks? Yeah, this is their 1976 to 1986 songs. You Really Got Me Live, A Rock and Roll Fantasy, Lola Live, which is an incredible version of it, which is why we actually got this one. Don't Forget to Dance, Living on a Thin Line, Low Budget, Do It Again, Better Things, True Pop Music, Heart of Gold, Celluloid Heroes. Yeah, I mean, if you want to hear a great Kinks album, this is one you can probably put in your book because it's a whole lot of fun. It was released June 1st, 1986. And I hate the fact that they don't rate like best of records like they should. Finally, Bad Company.
Love that record. The second record, so good.
Yep, the second record by the English supergroup Bad Company. The album released April 2nd, 1975, a month after the release of the single Good Lovin' Gone Bad, and 4 months before the album's second single, Feel Like Making. Yeah, that's them. The album reached number 3 in the UK and the US Billboard Top 200. It was certified gold, which means 500,000 units were sold by the Record Industry Association of America a month after its release. It went gold in 30 days. Mick Ralphs, Simon Kirk revealed on In the Studio, which developed the episode of Straight Shooter, the track Shooting Star, which told the story of a rock star who died early, was lyrically inspired by the drug and alcohol-related deaths of Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison. So that's a little bit of information I didn't know before I started digging deeper into this one. And that's exactly why we started the show, is so that we could get those little intimate details out to everybody. But that, my friend, is exactly what I was spinning on my platters this week. Why don't we find out who's hanging out with us today in the live chat room? I think there was 1 or 2 persons up over there hanging out. Let's see here. Of course, there we go. We got Gin firsted it out tonight. I'm sure Rod Dupree is hanging out there with him. And there, my friend, is Sam Squanch Rivera. Yoo-hoo, Curtin Rev. That's right. We love you too, buddy.
Glad you're hanging with us.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be where we are without our fans. That's for sure. Hey, I got to ask you, buddy. We always bring that one epic album to the table each week. What did you bring for us this week?
An influential album, maybe not epic as a standalone record, but very influential, and that is Muddy Waters' "Mud in Your Ear." Uh, Muddy Waters, many people would say he was basically the father of Chicago blues, more of the peppy up-tempo blues than the sadder blues, which was the norm for the time period that he was coming up. And he played with so many of the greats and had a great rivalry with people, like a friendly rivalry with like Howlin' Wolf, which I also love. And, you know, in the late 50s, I believe 58, 59. There might have even been some shows and tours afterwards into the early 60s, but Muddy Waters was brought to England and played in London, and it was very different. There was definitely a blues crowd there that had heard American blues and there was some European blues, but this was different. This was sort of a milestone event. And in many ways, the band still, I'm sure, would have formed and played, but in many ways, it led to the early direction of bands like the Rolling Stones, the early Fleetwood Mac, Cream, obviously the Yardbirds, Led Zeppelin. So many early bands were just in love with Muddy Waters, the Muddy Waters sound. Muddy Waters was one of the first to go electric. His first guitar, when he first started playing in juke joints up and down basically the Mississippi River up into Chicago, he was playing a $2.50 Sears and Roebuck guitar.
Yeah.
And he said, and he played the harmonica as well, but he said, they can't hear me. He said, I got to get me one of them amplifiers and one of them electric doohickeys.
One of them electric doohickeys, yep.
And he sure did. He got himself an electric guitar, and he was one of the first. He was a great slide player. And so, yeah, Muddy Waters, like I said, it's most all of the records. There's a few later that are not, but most all of them are compilations of singles that came out, mainly from Chess Records because he was with the Chess Boys. But he was so influential on so much of the music that we've all heard and all love that for me, Muddy himself and basically any of the Muddy Waters compilations of his early singles, especially the Chess Records singles, are epic. I mean, inspirational, like I said, led to, the Rolling Stones basically, and years later, obviously in the mid to late 60s, Muddy was still hanging out and he was still, pretty spry, and he was able to play with a lot of those bands. So he was able to show up and get on stage and play harmonica or play guitar, and you had whatever, whether it was Rolling Stones, the early Fleetwood Mac, the Peter Green Fleetwood Mac, they would play his songs and he would actually show up and play the songs with them. So that's why that was my epic record for this week. And this was a Christmas gift, a much appreciated Christmas gift. And so that was my epic record. First one for 2018. And I have to ask you, Reverend Jeff, what is your first epic record in January of 2018?
Oh, my friend. Epically, as we get into the record store, I go over to the new arrival boxes first because that's where all the good stuff is. They don't really even put it out underneath the guys' names. It goes in the new arrival box and usually doesn't make it out of there. Okay, but still in the new arrivals box at the end of the day, and then they file it underneath the artist's name. But like I said, 9 times out of 10 never makes it out of the artist box. Well, this one must have been in the new arrivals box just a minute too long because I got it. It is Iron Maiden's The Final Frontier. Now, this is the record that was created for the Star Trek movie, The Final Frontier. in 2010. The 15th studio album by the British heavy metal band Iron Maiden, released on August 13, 2010, and a bunch of other weird dates right around that. 76 minutes and 34 seconds.
A lot of music.
It's the band's second longest studio album to date. It's only surpassed by the 2015's Book of Souls. The band's final album to be released through EMI Records, marking the end of their 30-year relationship. Now, the album received largely favorable reviews from critics and peaked at #1 in 28 countries. So screw those guys. Largely favorable. You're #1 in 28 countries, and the critics aren't saying, I love it. You're an idiot. It includes the United Kingdom, where they began the band's 4th release to top the UK charts, following 1982, the Number of the Beast, and 88's Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, which are two of my favorite albums amongst them as well. Now, I hadn't heard this album before. I've never owned it before. I mean, I had given up on music for quite a few years, and I was eagerly wanting to listen to it. So I dropped it on the platter at the store, and I swear whoever owned it's never played it. I mean, it's flawless. It's 100% perfect. It's there were no turn controls. It was literally a turntable plugged into a headphones amp and a pair of headphones. That's what the setup was. And I'm sitting there with my eyes closed as the wife had to come by and tap me on the shoulder after 20 minutes. She's like, are you going to buy that? Because she could hear how loud I had the music, because I had the amp turned all the way up inside the headphones. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buy this. So it was absolutely fantastic. 2 single releases came out of the Satellite 15, The Final Frontier, and El Dorado. And I wish I had an auto turning record player. I really do. I'd love to be able to just play all 4 sides of this. Oh, wait, I have the digital FLAC. Oops. Is that sacrilege on this channel?
No, not at all.
Yeah, we're about vinyl, and I have the here, but when I really wanted to enjoy it, I didn't want to have to keep getting up to change it over and flip it on the record player. Now that I know where my favorite cuts are, I know what sides I want to go through. But I will sit here and put the FLAC on and just listen to the entire production and just enjoy it. Speaking of enjoying things, what I got for Christmas was a fantastic new pair of headphones. Now, I know a lot of people out there that have no idea what to buy. You could buy anything from $20 headphones to $900 headphones, and no one will tell you the truth about any of them. Well, I did a whole bunch of research on a low-cost pair of decent headphones with decent reviews from people who know what headphones should sound like, and I bought a pair of Superlux. I'm not going to give you the exact model because it doesn't really matter. They have a bunch of different models, but all of the Superlux line seems to be acceptable. It's not like hi-fi, but it's close. That's what everybody says. And I got to be honest with you. I was telling Kurt, they're a very revealing type of headphone. If it's bad music, you can tell. If it's good music, you can tell. And that's the reveal of something that's sensitive enough to actually reproduce what it's actually there to reproduce and not just guess at it, because that's what those other things do. They just kind of guess it. Well, it's a bass frequency, so let's make it sound like this, and I got to tell you. So if you're interested, yeah, they're not a fashion statement, as you can see, but they're comfortable. I wear them for hours and hours on end, and they sound fantastic, and they're not brash. You don't want to take them off. You're not taking them off because your ears are tired, and that's the nice thing about it. So if you're looking for a pair of headphones, I'd take a look at the Superlux. They're Taiwanese, by the way. They're not Chinese junk. They're made in Taiwan, and them Taiwanese people, they work like the Japanese. There's Japan, and there's China, and then there's Taiwan. Taiwan, like the lukewarmness of Asia. Kurt knows exactly what I'm talking about. If China's cold and Japan is hot, Taiwan is lukewarm. And with that, now that I've offended, about 230 million people on the planet, and not including the Chinese, the 4 billion people in China, let's end this thing tonight, buddy. I gotta say thanks for being here, man. I know we're both still under the weather, but wow, it feels good to be back on the air.
It certainly does.
You can find us Facebook at Vinyl Power Podcast. It pops right up. I mean, it really does. It's amazing. We got a 5-star review from somebody I don't know, so that's pretty cool. She says she loves the information and the humor, so hey, double thumbs up for that. Yeah, you can find us right here Thursdays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Pretty easy to do that and find it anytime in archive. Hit the subscribe bell. Yeah, we might even have some Vinyl Power shirts coming.
Oh yeah.
Who knows? Maybe a coffee mug too. We'll have to see. Thanks everybody for being here, and we will see you guys next week, right here on the Vinyl Power. That's right. Iron Maiden will make you sterile. My mama actually told me that once. You keep listening to that stuff, and you're never going to be able to have babies. I love you, Mama. I miss you. I think God asked you about all those lies, though.